Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the latest Backing Brentwood Business webinar brought to you by Brentwood Chamber of Commerce, Brentwood Borough Council and Brentwood Business Partnership. My name's Colin Barber and I'm the Chairman of Brentwood Chamber of Commerce, and I'm hosting today's webinar. And our guest today is Rupert Miles from Sandler Training, and we'll be hearing from him very, very shortly. First of all, also, I'd like to welcome all of you today and thank you very much for joining us in this webinar, and I hope you'll find it interesting and informative. For those of you who haven't watched any of our webinars up to now, then just to let you know, the format is that Rupert will be talking to us for about half an hour or so, and there will then be an opportunity for questions to Rupert on the subject of what he's talking about today. If you have any questions, then the way it works is if you hit the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, and it's bottom of my screen now, I think it's the bottom of most screens. Anyway, there's a Q&A button somewhere. Type in your question and I will put the questions to Rupert on your behalf at the end of the presentation. Also, just to let you know, today's webinar, along with all the previous webinars, is being recorded and it will be broadcast on the Chamber of Commerce YouTube channel later on today. And we will send out a link so you can see the YouTube channel with all the other webinars if you haven't had a chance to see them yet. So, as I say, if you have any questions during the webinar, then feel free to type them in by hitting the Q&A button, and I'll put them to Rupert on your behalf. But what remains now really is for me to introduce you to our guest this morning, Rupert Miles. Are you there, Rupert?
Hi there.
Good morning and welcome, and thank you for joining us today. And we look forward to hearing your presentation, and indeed seeing your presentation. So just before we start, Rupert, would you like to just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thanks. First of all, Colin, thanks for asking me on board, and thank you to all of you who've taken up some of your valuable time on a Friday morning to hear this. I hope it's helpful. Typical format is to ask the speaker all about them, and they drone on, and I can drone on for at least 5 minutes talking about a load of stuff that you instantly forget. So we're going to cut through that, if we will, and I've sought Colin's permission to do this in advance. And so just look at my LinkedIn profile. You want to know anything about me, it's fine, it's all there, okay? Any feedback, gratefully received. But what I want to do is take this moment just to talk about a guy called Davis Sandler. So what I train is Sandler, as you know from the introduction. David Sandler was somebody who died in the mid to late 90s, and he was a salesman. He was not a particularly good salesman, but he soon worked out that features and benefits was too much like hard work. Overcoming objections and stalls and all this kind of chasing clients who never returned your call was all rather tedious, and he didn't earn much money doing it. And unfortunately, too many of us these days are still doing that kind of stuff. So he sat back and he said, look, there must be a better way of doing it. And he essentially came up with a view that people buy emotionally and they justify their decisions intellectually, rationally. And that's pretty well accepted by most people these days. But underpinning his sales process was some deep-rooted psychology. And that's what I do. And what you're about to hear now is one session at high speed. So Colin's just given me half an hour, which for somebody like me is hardly any time at all. Just half an hour to go through this particular lesson. Now it's one of 6 lessons that I give in a course called No Guts, No Gain. So Colin, if you could call up the first slide, please. So there you go, No Guts, No Gain. And this was David Sandler's favorite course. Sandler, by the way, is worldwide now. He set up a franchising operation, hence why I do it. And if you're in America, you probably never heard of them before, but if you're in America, you would have heard of them. Corporate America is riven with Sandler people. In fact, if you're a graduate of the Harvard Business School, Sandler is now the system that they train for Harvard Business School attendees. So No Guts, No Gain was his favorite course. And the reason why is that he came up in his experience, which was over 30 or 40 years of dealing with a lot of business owners, a lot of salespeople, that actually the essential difference between achievement and non-achievement was not about the tips, tricks, techniques that any trainer will give you, frankly. I think mine are pretty good. There are a number of trainers on this call. They think theirs is pretty good. I'm not going to argue the case. The difference with Sandler and his approach was he said, look, there's a gap between where we know what to do and actually doing it. And it's in that mindset gap where things fall down. As it were, you go to the seminar, you get fired up, you're good to go, you go out and do business the following day, and somehow it doesn't seem to work the way it used to in the classroom. So No Guts, No Gain is a course which goes over a number of weeks, which allows David to give you his philosophy. And I've chosen this part of the course because it'll give you some specifics that you can take away. Now, there are 3 things that if you're still with me at the end, I expect you to have. And please do grab a piece of paper, grab a notepad, just mark these down and hold me accountable to it. The first one is you will come up with an idea that you have landed on based on the material I'm going to show you, that you will now concentrate on to really step your business up a gear. Just one idea. The second thing is I will give you a tool. I will give you something you can use in your everyday interactions with your clients, with your suppliers, any of your business conversations. And the final thing is that I will give you an opportunity to engage in this course if you find it useful. So 3 things coming out of this: the tool, the one idea, and the opportunity further to engage in this course. That's my upfront contract, and that will become obvious what I mean by that by the end of this webinar. Okay, are we good to go? By the way, I hate these things. I'm talking to a laptop. I thrive off what's called psychological strokes when people say, hello, Rupert, that's a psychological stroke. So I'm all assuming now, just for the sake of my own head trash, that you're all nodding in agreement and you're completely happy to go because I have nothing else to base it on. So on the basis of that, and let's hope I'm right, let's go to the first slide, please, Colin. Okay, this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the new you. That's why, if you saw the promotions, that's why you're here. And Davis Sandler's quote is absolutely germane to this. List of things that I've observed of people who are assertive, gutsy, and who plant their feet. Their feeling was too often people wimp out. They don't actually hold themselves accountable to doing things they need to know, need to do, even if they do know them extremely well, they've been trained in them. So I'm going to talk to you about what those things are from Sandler's experience, and there are, believe it or not, 19 of them. I'm going to talk about legal contracts and upfront contracts as promised, the salesperson's bill of rights, and attitude behavior journal. So that's what you're going to get. So first of all, before we get going into the 19 things, here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to grab your pencil and pad or whatever you've got, and I'd like you, as we go through these things, the first one is control your costs. Write down control your costs, if you will, and beside that, put a cross or a tick. The cross indicates that actually in that area, you're probably not doing so well. Doesn't mean you're useless at it, but let's say you're 6 out of 10 or less, okay? And the tick indicates that you're 7 out of 10 or more. In other words, you've maybe not got it perfect, who of us have, but you've actually probably got that reasonably well covered, because I don't want to leave you with a whole list of things that you might concentrate on. I want to get down to the 3 and then the 1 thing you're going to take out of here. So I'm going to go through at breakneck speed. So all you have to do, write the subject, the first one being control your costs, and just when you've heard what I say, just say, have I got this covered? Tick. Do I think there's more I could do on that? And then we'll visit that at the end of this section. So we're good to go. So Colin, if we could move on a slide, please. So here are the first 7. Control your costs. There's a difference between wanting and needing business. If you want business, that's good. If you need it, that's not so good. One of the things that can put you in a position of absolutely needing it, if your business isn't financially controlled. In other words, you're really desperate for the income because you haven't got your cost base right. So the first view that Sandler had is that you've got to be across your numbers. You've got to be across your costs. And it's those costs that will either put you in a position when you go into a discussion with a supplier or a potential client or whatever it happens to be, that actually I can leave this discussion and it's not going to destroy my business. Too often I come across people who run their business such that they can only keep going if they've got another deal coming down the pipeline. And we know how stressful that is. So wanting business is completely different from needing business. Work as hard as you can, says David Sandler, to try to want the business, not need the business, and control your costs. So point 1, how do you score on that? Are you completely covered on that, or is that something potentially you might look at? Point 2, control your draw. By draw, I mean control your salary. When we're in business, and there are many people on this call now who are self-employed or they're running their own business, the temptation is to make hay while the sun shines and There's lots of good revenues coming in, it's highly profitable. And so you take a nice big whacking dividend or however you pay yourself. What Sandler says is don't do that. Be consistent. Give yourself a salary or pay yourself in a way that is consistent each month. In other words, regardless of whether the deal comes through or not, you know that you've got the basic income you need to cover your fundamental needs for living. By that, of course, you're taking out the variances that change our mindset. You know, I've got one of my franchisees in the States says, I never look at my bank account. I actually don't believe him when he says this, but I never look at my bank account because either it's looking really good, in which case I get complacent, or it looks absolutely terrible, in which case I panic. So just control your draw. Just give yourself a monthly salary or weekly, whatever it is, however you pay yourself, and make sure that even if it's been absolutely brilliant, keep the consistency there. That once again will help avoid this kind of feast and famine approach to sales and how you do business. Point 2, how are you doing on that? Do you do that? Or maybe you don't. Control your prices. Look, pricing is a mindset thing, okay? Be clear about your pricing because money is just a conceptual thing. And I'll give you an example. I don't think he's on the call, but I'm not going to be too specific, but he is a member of the Chamber. And he's somebody I was talking to a few months back, and I said, money's a conceptual thing. What did he mean by that? So I said, actually what you get paid is exactly what you think you deserve. And there'll be a number of people on the call, maybe all of you are going, no, that's not true. You know, I get paid what my clients will pay me. No, it's completely conceptual. So he took this idea away. And a few weeks afterwards, he came back to me and he said, you know what, I took to heart that money is a conceptual thing. And he charges, his business is that he provides a particular service in the kind of healthcare market. And he charges on an hourly basis. And he said, you know what, I'm worth more than I'm charging my clients. So he put his prices up. I don't know how much by, but pretty chunky. I said, what happened? He said, I just earned more. Money is the conceptual thing. Get your head round pricing. Get it clear. Don't confuse it. Be precise. Make sure it works for your business. Hold to it and don't worry about it. Productivity, control your productivity. We are the creature of all of our habits. You know, we need to be really careful about how we leak value out of our businesses. And I'll give you one example of this. Do this exercise if you don't do it already, which is take your diary, look forward a week, and color code all of the activities that you've got planned in your diary. And for the purposes of this discussion, I'm going to assume that you run a diary which is essentially balancing up everything that you do. So all of the personal stuff with the business stuff, all of the business stuff broken down into things that are necessary for the business to run, things that are sales orientated and revenue generating, that you have those blocked out pretty consistently throughout the week, and you know how you're going to spend your 24 hours times 7 days. Let's assume you've got that. And maybe if you haven't got that, that's something you might consider. But let's look at your productivity. Take that diary, take that schedule, and block out the ones that are pay related. By that I mean earn you money. Okay. If anybody wants to ask some questions about how I define pay, I'm happy to later. I won't do it now. I haven't got time. And look at the non-pay. So non-pay is all the necessary stuff, the VAT returns, dealing with the accountant, sorting out your website and all of that kind of good stuff. The pay stuff is time effectively in front of your clients. So this to me is a pay situation. Mark out your pay in one color and your non-pay in the other color. If you are spending a disproportionate amount of your non-pay time during active periods when your prospects and clients are at work, so broadly 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, I think that still holds, then you are leaking productivity. Put the non-pay in times when you don't have a chance to talk to your customers. And talking about that, control your customers. People don't understand that actually you get the customers you deserve. You know, how many times do I hear business owners moaning about their customers? Oh, they never behave like this, and you know, they're always messing me around and everything else like that. Well, I've got no time for that because you train them to be like that. And once again, people would say, no, I didn't. That's the way they are. Well, let me challenge that. The way you trained them, for example, was when that first point of contact you had with your customer, where you did what they asked you to do. What do you mean by that? Well, what happened is you got in touch with them and they said, look, it sounds really good. I'll tell you what, send me a proposal. And you sent them a proposal. Nothing wrong with that. Everything wrong with that. Don't do what your customers ask you to do unless you fully understand why and you've got some agreement as to what the benefit to you both of doing it is. In other words, the way you treat your customers, even when they're prospects, will determine the relationship that you have going forward. And here, once again, in terms of your costs, control your costs. Make sure that you understand your whole finances, not just literally how much you're doing, but how are you projecting forward, and really work hard to get that return on investment ratio right. And make sure you understand the value of your time. People say to me, what's your time worth? And typically with professionals, they'll say anything between £200 up to £600 an hour. No, that's not what the value of your time is. It's not what you bill your customers. It's actually the value that you're creating. You want to sell a business in 10 years' time at X million pounds. How many days, hours, and minutes have you got to do that? We'll divide that, and then you'll find that your time is worth way more than you actually plot it in terms of hourly billing rates. Limit your goals. I mean, we talk a lot about goals, and every good advisor will encourage you to have goals. And by the way, I'm pretty tough on goals. 95% of people don't have goals. 95% of people don't have goals. I mean, I don't understand that, because if you don't have a goal, how do you know where you're pointing? And if you don't know where you're pointing, how do you know when you've got there? It just doesn't make any sense to me. But 95% of people go through life seeing what gets bowled up to them and coping with it and hoping something will turn out all right. Well, guess what? If you haven't got a plan, you're working to somebody else's plan. So get your goals. And by goals, I mean write them down. So hands up. Score yourself. Have you actually got some goals? Are you completely covered on that? Which is great. I hope you all have. If you haven't, take some time out, write some goals, do a nice big chunky 5 or 10 year goal, and then relate those goals back to your daily behaviours, because it's only in today that you can actually make the difference. But limit them. How often have we tried to lose weight? And what we do is we go on some cockamamie crash diet. It all goes horribly wrong within a matter of days, and then we give up and we end up probably heavier than we were when we first started. The reason is we're just prone. We want instant response. We want instant reaction, instant gratification. We overstretch, it fails. It's just a pattern that's repeated time and time again. It's the same in your business. You want to change your business, change it over time, and change it with singular targeted goals. There's the latte calculation, which I'm not particularly clear on it, but you can Google it, which is how much money would you generate over the course of a working life if you just invested the amount of money that you put into buying your daily cup of coffee and invested that in the funds. And I'm told by got 2 IFA clients, I'm told by them that actually the price of a latte invested over a 30-year, career would be worth north of £1 million. That's change. But it didn't happen overnight. Limit it, be precise, and it's the time equation that gets you the long value. Colin, do you mind just flicking over to the next slide, please? Okay, reinforce your training. This is not a pitch for me, okay? But whatever you do, whatever you learn, if you go to those seminars, whoever you learn from, you can learn from colleagues, you learn from books or whatever it happens to be. The only way that we actually learn stuff is by repeated application. It's how we do everything. And training and business is no different. We can get the idea at an intellectual level of the things we need to do. And coming out of this session today, I'm hoping you'll pick one thing you're going to concentrate on. And I'm hoping you'll go away and you'll talk to people about it. I'm hoping you'll go away and read up on it. And I'm hoping you'll go away and set yourself a specific goal on a daily basis to do it. But it's in the repetition and the further development where the learning comes. So it starts with knowing. So here's the idea. You then believe there's enough in that idea to do something about it. So you do it. And then when you do it, you start owning it. That's when it works. Now, a lot of people talk to me about how long does this take? There's a great coach that I know, a guy called Bill Bartlett. He does what I do. He's an incredibly successful coach. And by successful, he coaches 20 of the top 100 Hollywood players by income. 20 of the top 100 Hollywood players. And stories I could tell you about that. It's great. Another time. So what he says, and who am I to say otherwise, 21 days of trying it, getting your head around it, and then 90 days of reinforcement minimum. And when I work with my clients, the absolute minimum I will work with them is 3 months. There is nothing I can give them in less than 3 months. And many of them stay with me for many months after that. Reinforce your training, make it work for you. It's tough, it's repetitive, but this is the only way you'll get the traction. Give more to get more. Well, this is Emerson's law of attraction. For the BNI members among you, you'll know it as give as gain. They basically take Emerson's law of attraction that basically go out there, just give connection, be generous with your knowledge, with your insights, be generous with your time, be generous with your network. Make sure that you're qualified to do it, but make sure that you're out to help people. Go out with a mindset first thing in the morning that I'm actually here to help people. It's not a mindset of I'm here to make money. It'll change everything. And protect your mind, work at it, work at the kind of things that reinforce you, that kind of boost your tank. You know, I see it literally as a kind of fuel tank. I have things that drain my tank. So full disclosure, VAT returns, discussions with my bank manager, and I still have one, believe it or not, accountants and things like that, I face them with dread. I really do, proper draining. Out on a bike yesterday for an hour and a half, sweating away, trying to average more than 14 miles an hour, well, that fills my tank. Whatever it is, work at it, get it going. And certainly with lockdown type stuff, I can see a lot of people really struggling because they've forgotten that kind of formula. It's all gone a bit flabby in some cases. Treat yourself, make sure it's there, reinforce yourself, and treat yourself in terms of learning and skill sets and things like that. Give yourself sleep, give yourself all that kind of good stuff. You know it better than I, but reinforce it, because there are going to be times when you're going to have to do stuff, plant your feet, do stuff you don't want to do, get courageous, and that will deplete it. So make sure the battery is topped up. Take good notes. There's no shorthand to this. There's no other way to get through this. All great performers record their performance. It's as simple as that. Now, hands up. Some of you may ask at the end of this, how many of these did you score a tick on? How many across? This is consistently one I have to hold myself accountable to. Every interaction, I had a coaching call from 8 till 9. I've written copious notes. My accountability is to distill those notes, record them, put them against my client's file. So the next coaching call I have with him in 2 weeks' time, I'm absolutely on it. Is that my natural instinct to do that? No, anything but. I just want to get on and prepare for this, for example. I want to get on and do new stuff. That's where I am. So I have to force myself to do it. Avoid the good notes at your peril. You need to work out how your business works. Well, plot it, track it, create checklists. You know, this is what happens when these things happen. You know, you get on board a plane, you've got two choices. You talk to the pilots of, you've got two planes, you talk to the pilots of one of them. The pilot goes, everything okay? Yeah, I just wanted to ask before you took off, how you go about doing your jobs. Oh, look, I've been doing this for hours. You know, actually, I've done 20,000 hours flying. Yeah, I pretty well know everything. It should be all right. Or you talk to the pilot who's not going to talk to you. And the reason why is because he's going through his checklist to make sure he hasn't missed anything. Which one are you going to fly with? Be the one that you want to fly with. Don't fly by the seats of your pants. Burn your bridges. I love this. Too often I hear people saying, well, I'm going to try this new thing, especially in my world. Oh, brilliant idea. I'm really going to do that. Okay. And you go, right, how did it go? Well, it's a bit difficult because I had all this other stuff going on. Why did you bother? Burn your bridges. You think it's good? And this goes to my absolute belief. Rule number 1 of the Sandler rules, and there are 49 of them. Why he didn't think of the 50th, I've no idea. But there are 49. And rule number 1 is control. Rule number 1 is do not be frightened of failure. Do not fear failure. Okay? You have to learn to fail to win. Burn your bridges. Yes, there's no comfort zone. Yes, there's no parachute or going back. But if it's worth doing 100%, not 90% with a 10% exit, because that 10% will kill the project. Ask for more money. It goes back to the money concept stuff. Just try it. Do you know, if any of you did, walking away from this, is just look at the money conversations you're about to have and just add 10% to whatever you're going to quote. And you'll say, oh, I can't do that, it's competitive and everything else like that. No, it's not. No, your money concept happened well before you got to the quote stage. Your money concept started in that first interaction with your client. Your money concept built when that client realized how much they needed your product or service. Your money concept built when they realized that you were the one who fully understood them. Your money concept built when you had the money discussion and arranged it in advance. And you put it chunkily, because what you do is good. It's not to be discounted against competitors. Hands up who thinks their competitors are better than them. And I'm assuming nobody has got their hand up. Well, if you do, go and do something else. Go and do something you can compete at and be better than your competitors. You are. Charge accordingly. Colin, if you're still awake, if I haven't put you to sleep, please could you click the slide on, and I'll just run through the last few. Okay. Get to the real problem. Okay. Prospects lie. By that, I mean, we're all prospects. I lie. You know, I walk into a shop, they say, can I help you? And I say, no, just looking. We all lie. We're not bad people, but we're just taught to kind of not really say what it is that's on our mind. And actually, when you first have a discussion in business, it's frequently the case that people will present you with what I call a smokescreen answer. What's your problem? Well, I'm struggling with this. It's never the real problem. Discount whatever they say to begin with. Learn to ask questions. Learn to get to the underlying reason for the problem, and then, and only then, work out the impact of that problem on the individual at a personal level, which is the emotional engagement. And whilst we're talking about emotions, lighten up, just have some fun. You know, I know it's tough, you know, God. I, by the way, have given up watching the news. I really can't. I mistakenly, I don't know why I did it yesterday morning. I put on Farming Today, I think it was, and it was all about COVID-19. And then then it goes to the 6 o'clock news, and it was more COVID. Then it goes to the papers, it's more, and it was all the financial, America's finally waking up to Wall Street, to the fact that the world's going to hell in a handcart, and all this, everything's dropping. And why do I do this to myself? This is just, let's just have some fun. I know there are serious things going on in the world, I wouldn't belie that, but actually, you know, engaging well with prospects should be an engaging process. Just take the mickey out of yourself. Let them know you're going to need it when you mess up, when you trip up and you haven't taken yourself too seriously. People are going to be a lot more forgiving. And I do it all the time, both trip out and also try and laugh at myself as well. There's quite a lot to laugh at. Solve problems instead of creating them. I'm a great believer in, you've got a 50-50 choice here. Just flick a coin. Do you want to be the solution? Do you want to be the problem? The number of people I hear, it's going, oh yeah, it's awful. It's terrible. Yeah, business is really bad. It's really, really, really bad. And they kind of say, it's like the exam thing. You know, the kids, you know, your kids go, what was the exam like? It was terrible. Really? All right. And really? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, everybody says so. No, they don't. They don't say that. You've just got yourself with the moaners. You got with somebody who kind of reinforces, it's difficult, it's impossible, he struggled, you know, nothing's going to happen. And I still see this in talking to businesses. There are those who are hunkering down, and I know it's bloody tough, and there are those who have done really well, but it's still tough. Just be the solution. Everybody wants people who are able to engage, understand, and come up with something concrete the way forward. They don't want people who talk fluffy nonsense, all be okay, yada, yada, yada. Well, they want people who are going to engage it. Be that solution provider. Think that about your own business as well as other people's business. You will attract, you remember Sarah Emerson's law of compensation? You will attract people to you who will seek out your help to do it. And that will help you. And in helping you, it'll help your business ultimately as well. And then just 2 more, and I feel particularly strongly about this one, 18, cultivator support group. So you know, one of the tough things about my job is I actually have to be the product of the product. And by that, in other words, there's no authenticity in me if I train stuff, coach stuff, talk about stuff, if I'm not doing it myself. So there is nothing, too many negatives. Everything I do, I've experienced myself, okay, for better or for worse, and I've failed at it, which makes me better at talking about it. But cultivate a support group. So my support group is 4 strong. This is notwithstanding all the franchisee help and support I get from my networks and conferences. I do 4 conferences a year, 3 of them abroad when you're allowed to, and all of that good stuff. No, this is weekly. Okay, so weekly I have 2 accountability calls with 1 person in Philadelphia in the US, 1 in the UK, and I have 2 coaches. 1 in Canada, as it happens, who coaches me around my marketing, and the 1 in the UK. The 2 coaches I pay. So this month's bill for me, for my coaching, is just short of £2,000. Have I got £2,000 lying around to do it? No. But do I want to grow a big business? Yeah. Am I prepared to invest £2,000 in a month to grow the business? It's no brainer as far as I'm concerned. But cultivate your support group. You don't have to spend money on it. I choose to because these people are expert and they're particularly useful to me. But so, for example, my UK coach had to sit through one of my briefing sessions, an hour and a half. She had to, poor lass, she had to sit through listening to me burbling on for an hour and a half. But what she gave me was invaluable. Cultivate people who give you genuine feedback. Don't just look at your mates down the pub. Get people who really have experienced this stuff, really got the bruises and the knocks, and do a deal with them. It doesn't have to be financially based. Just do a reciprocal. Look, I'll help you if you help me. All right. If you haven't got a support group, if you haven't got somebody who can coach you, and this is not a pitch for paid coaching, but choose the people you respect, work with them, and watch your business fly. Because it's only with that tertiary, that third party accountability that you can really help hold yourself accountable. Now, you might be one of those rare people, and it's probably 10 or 20% of people who are perfectly capable of saying, I've set my heart on this and I'll do it. Hands up, I'm not. I'm in probably the 60% that could do it but need the help. If you're in that, think about, should you do a support group? Tick no, tick yes, cross no, and then finally keep going. Churchill summed it up, or I think it's Churchillian. He seems to have said an awful lot of pithy things. Most of them I'm not sure he actually said, but this one, which is, and forgive my language, but it's a historical quote, which is just keep buggering on. There is a story that is told in a classic book by Napoleon Hill called Think and Grow Rich. And he tells the story of a prospector, and it's a long story, so I'll cut to the chase. Basically gives up on a mine, a gold mine, and they've done it for months, sunk loads of money. And somebody else picks up the equipment cheap, goes and looks at it, gets a proper surveyor, the coach, as it were, to have a look at it, and they work out that they're just short of the seam. As it turned out, they reinstated the gold mine, and they were 3 feet short of hitting the true vein that then generated millions for the guy who picked it up afterwards. Don't give up. Colin, could I ask you there's a couple more things I want to say before I open it up to questions, okay? So first of all, I want to talk to you. I offered you a tool, something that you could use. Now, what I'd like you to do with what you've got on your notes so far of the 19 points, where I hope some of you at least have recorded those points and done a tick or a cross, is I'd like you to look through those. Maybe we can do this at the end. Maybe you can do it after this is finished, and just pick 3 that you think might be worth thinking about. And of those 3, just pick one. Don't do all 3. You won't do it. Simple as that. Pick one today, straight away, now, if you can, immediately, and choose to do something to nudge yourself along today towards achieving whatever it is. Buy the book, look at the website, change the behavior, get a coach, get a trainer, whatever it happens to be, talk to some friends, but whatever your challenge happens to be, make sure you commit to one. Otherwise, a part of your time with me will be wasted. And frankly, from my point of view, just so you know, if there's just one person who just changes one part of their behavior as a result of this 45 minutes, that's good enough for me. So thank you. If you do change your behavior, this is my positive strokes. I still need these strokes. Just tell me what you did that was different. Just like that story I told about the guy who did his hourly rate. He just said, look, I just changed my money concept and I now charge X% more. Simple as that. It's great. Keeps me going. You might not want me to keep going, of course, but it does. So I'd really appreciate that. So let's talk about legal contracts. We all know what a legal contract is. There has to be mutual understanding. There has to be a proposal. Both sides have to accept it. There has to be a consideration. So what is it you're going to do? There has to be competency. You have to be able to do it. And there has to be a lawful object. It absolutely has to. This is what contracts work. This is change your house. Doesn't matter. I'm not the lawyer, as you probably gathered, but this is concept. So in the world of Sandler, we have a version of this. Colin, would you mind going to the next slide, please? Upfront contracts, we call it. This is my gift to you. This is the thing you can use, the tool. You've got, I don't know how many meetings you've got scheduled for the rest of today or next week. Look at the meeting and do this. Reconstruct whatever you've said in advance of that telephone call, Zoom call, whatever it happens to be. Go back and redefine mutually, agree it mutually with your prospect or whoever you're talking to, your supplier, whatever it happens to be, your client. Redefine the purpose, make sure you're both agreed on the purpose of the meeting. Redefine the time, make sure it's absolutely clear. I won't go into it now, this stuff I train takes ages to do, but have a go at doing it. Be specific about the time. Make sure you understand what they want out of it. double check, okay? No mutual mystification, and make sure you're clear about what you want to discuss and what your expectations are, okay? Do that, and then the clincher is agree in advance what's the outcome of the discussion is going to be. Oh, I hear you say you can't possibly, you've got to have the meeting. That's the whole point. Yes, you can. Let's assume it's a sales meeting. So what are the outcomes? Well, one obvious outcome is a no, and it's absolutely fine. You can set that up front. That's absolutely fine. If there's no fit here, I might call it out. I'm sure you'd be happy if I did, or you might tell me it's a no. Both comfortable with that. You okay with that? Great. Get it off the agenda. It's a no. Who cares, right? The other outcome is a yes. Yes could be some business. Who knows? Depends what stage you are in the cycle. But a yes is to nudge the process on in a meaningful and agreed way towards the next part, right? End of story. No think it overs. No, I'll get back to you. No, well, I loved what you're saying, Rupert. You know, give me the weekend. What happens after the weekend when they say they're going to call you? Well, they don't call you. I've given up on all of that. I don't accept. If anybody wants to be fired from my class, they accept think it overs. Simple as that. Just give yourself the credit that you can have this conversation up front with your prospects, with your business partners, and actually get it all clear. And do you know what? If you can't agree the contracts up front, don't have the meeting. Save yourself some time. Yeah, that's my gift to you. Change your life. All right, Colin, couple of other things to go. Thank you. Bill of Rights, strongly feel about this. You do have a chance to do all of these things, okay? I do not believe the salesperson's role is subservient to your prospect or client. I just don't. I think it's equal business stature. You've got to start believing it as well. And you've got to adopt the behaviors, the techniques, and the right attitudes to be able to do that. And when you do, your world will change. You'll be less chasing people around the place. Less weekends as I used to spend worrying about whether that big deal was going to come in or not, whether the pipeline was going to start filling up or not. Do all these things. Be yourself. Enjoy it. And Colin, next slide, please. Courage. Yeah, plant your feet. This is what Sandler was all about. You know, courage isn't doing things that's risking. So I'm risking doing this. I'm risking the fact that nobody turns up, that they do turn up and they don't like it, that they badmouth me and say it's a waste of time and all that kind of, that's a risk. I didn't take any courage to do it because this is what I do, okay? But if I was a different personality, if I'd never done anything like this before and this is my first time, and I thought it was important and I actually steeled myself and practiced myself, and I had one of my clients who did do one of these earlier webinars, I know how much it took him to do it. I know how long and hard he reversed for it and how he concentrated on it. That's courage. And do you know what? Even in the darkest hours, and I'm hoping none of you are in that place, but even in those times when you do have that terrible 2 o'clock in the morning feeling where you think it's just not working, I can't work it all out, and you're just lying awake. Do you know what? Look back on that and say that was the moment I showed the most courage. Because regardless of how bad I did, I stepped up and I did what was required. Final 2 slides. Colin. Thank you, Mr. Prospect, Mrs. Prospect. Thank you for messing me around. Thank you for all the kind of think it overs. Thank you for the blockers. Thank you for all the kind of stuff that you told me that turned out not to be true. Thank you for being so awkward. And do you know what it did? Is it made me tough. With the right kind of support and the right kind of structures, you can say goodbye to all of that. And you should thank all of the people that challenged you to get there. And they always say that planes don't take off with a following wind. They take off with a, headwind. Thank the people who give you the headwind, because they're the people, as long as you've got the strategy and you've got the right kind of support and advice and some of the things I've talked to you, they're the people who you're going to look back and say, without them, I couldn't have done it. And then finally, and this is the final slide, Colin. Finally, I'm going to talk to you very briefly about this. You probably can't read that. It's not intentional, but it's the slide I have in this deck. It talks about journals. If you don't do a journal, start. If you want to talk to me about journals, fine. I haven't got time to go into it now. But daily journals, which not only record your diary, your activities, and what you're going to set out as goals for that day, but also record your attitude. A daily journal isn't an option in success. I think by my definition, certainly in my world, the world of Sandler franchisees, there are somewhere in the region of about 500 franchisees like me worldwide. And obviously, when I first started a couple of years ago, I just went and talked to a few of the top performers, the multi-millionaire performers in the world of Sandler, the people who train people like GE, Salesforce, Microsoft, and all that good stuff. And I said, what do you do? And they said, there's just two things. And this is my parting gift to you. I want to get this stuff sorted. You want to get the new you, get tough, do two things. Decide on your goal, right? Hopefully you might have zeroed in on one area. Be specific. So commit to the behaviors and journal. Record it on a daily basis. What you're struggling with, completely juicy, completely open. Nobody else has to read it. It's just for you and your mindset. But do the behaviors. Keep doing the behaviors and record it. And then what you'll record is your attitude climbing and climbing. And as it goes up, so will your business. Just behaviors and journaling. Ladies and gentlemen, if any of you are still listening, thank you. And Colin, I don't know, have I left any time at all? We did start 5 minutes late. So that's, I make that my calculation something like 8 minutes past 10. So maybe we've got till
No, you're doing well.
a couple of questions. All right.
That was about 30 minutes, so well done. Very interesting.
Was it? I did stick to my contract, did I? Well, there you go. Upfront contract.
No,
Thank you, Colin. Cheers.
I know you did have to skip through some of the slides fairly quickly, but obviously, just to remind those of you watching, if you do want to watch it again, it will be on our YouTube channel, and there will be a chance to see the slides at your own pace. So as I said earlier, and as Rupert said, if you do have questions for Rupert, then just hit the Q&A button and type in your questions, and I'll be happy to put them to Rupert on your behalf. I guess the first question, Rupert, would be about the obviously all the points you've made, and in the current circumstances of Corona and all the difficulties businesses are going through, is there one or maybe one or two of those particular points that you would say are particularly relevant and important at this time?
No, and the reason why is I think we tend to try and intellectualize the things that we need to do to get things sorted out, okay? And by intellectualize, we tend to jump to what's the solution. And so we come up with, you should do this or you should do that. Now, I'm a coach. I never tell people to do things. I might train them in techniques and process, never tell them to. You have to decide, and hence the exercise of the 1 to 19, what areas there do you think might be more profitable to you? Because the big challenge is not actually how you do it. The big challenge is between the ears. So about 95% of it is attitudinal. Do you know what? The good people, COVID-19 makes no difference to them at all, because they just power through. They're the people who I call the kind of 10%ers. They're the people I have no time with at all because I can't help them. They know how to do this stuff, whatever. But the rest of us, what we need to do is we need to get tough with ourselves. And when I say that get tough, the new you, it's not get tough on your suppliers, not get tough on your clients or anything, or your staff or whatever it happens to be. It's actually getting tough with yourself, holding yourself accountable. So as I said right at the end, the two things I would encourage you to explore, if you can ignore everything else, is just find a behavior that you think over time, the latte effect, will lead in time. And you need the time. It's not going to happen quickly, but you need the time. In time, if you repeat that over and over again, will lead you to some part of what you want to achieve, and then journal it. That's it in a nutshell.
And how often do you look back on your journal?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Colin. I'm really glad you asked that. So when I coach people, I insist they do journaling. If they don't journal, they kind of default and disqualify themselves, okay? And that's quite difficult. So to give you an idea how I help people journal, and this will sound properly bonkers, because I do get frustrated when people don't journal. It's quite a difficult habit to pick up. You know, I'm not saying it's easy. I've struggled. It's taken me, I first started trying to journal maybe 10 years, 8, 9, 10 years ago. And I'm not sure I've even fully got it cracked now. So what I do, and anyone's welcome, by the way, who's still on this call, is, and I can send them a link, I do a 10-minute Zoom call every day, Monday to Saturday. I give everyone a day off on Sunday at 6 o'clock in the morning for 10 minutes. And there were 9 of us on the call this morning. And what we do, it's like some kind of voodoo cult. We say hello and we say goodbye, but that's basically it. And we just do our journal. Why? Well, it's a behavior, isn't it? And actually, the behavior with journaling is, first of all, do it and then use it. Once you've got into the habit, then as you rightly say, you can review and go, you know what, I got that client. Let's look back and just see what kind of mindset I was in on the day I first contacted. Go back into your CRM, see what the first contact was, okay? And that was on Tuesday, the 9th of February or something like that. And look at your journal for that day and look how you felt. And in the journal for that day, you'll have, I made 15 cold calls, nobody picked up. It was a rubbish day, right? Now review that day on the basis you've just picked up a 60 grand bit of business whose first contact you made on that day. That's the power of journaling. And what you'll end up with, Colin, is you'll end up with an absolute certainty. And I'm not sure I'm there yet, but you will get there. And this is what Davis Sandler said, that actually from the point of your attitude is 10 all the time. That all the stuff that goes on in your world, it's just irrelevant. It's what Rudyard Kipling, if anyone knows the poem If, it's slightly ancient, but I was taught it at school. If you can treat victory and defeat as the imposters they both are, then you'll be out of your own way. And most people's problems in business and in sales is their own self trips them up. When they recognize that actually they are I-10, as I call it, top of the tops, and actually things can go well in your world, they can go badly, but you're fundamentally Colin. In all that beauty and glory on the day you were born, no one is going to say otherwise or imply it otherwise. That's true.
That reminds me, Rupert, of the webinar which I did early on in this series, Choose Your Attitude, and it really does sum up by saying that how you react to the circumstances is entirely up to you, but that's what will influence the outcome.
Bang on.
I've got a question which probably just needs to clarify something. I think it's because on your screen, your name appears as Rupert Sandler. So someone said to me, is Rupert Sandler related to David Sandler? So I think we need to emphasise that you're not Rupert Sandler, you're actually Rupert Miles.
Oh, please forgive me. I'm not related to Adam Sandler either, which is the other. I think he's an actor or something like that.
Oh, right.
No, it is definitely Rupert Miles at Sandler.com is the email address. And I work, and as I said, Sandler's a franchise operation worldwide. And I bought the Essex franchise 2 years ago.
Yeah. Which is handy, because someone just asked us to remind us of your contact details. So it's Rupert Miles at Sandler. Rupert.miles at Sandler.com.
And look, please get hold of me in only one situation. I mean, by all means, talk to me about whatever you want, okay? But what I'm really interested in is there one, and I want to use you to use me as an accountability kind of kick, okay? Is there one thing that you're going to do, having sat through 40 or 50 minutes of me burbling on, one thing that you're going to do that you're going to commit to doing differently? Tell me, just email me that one thing, all right? And then tell me, and then I'll reply by saying when you're going to do it, when you're going to do it by, what's involved, and everything else like that. And we'll enter into a contract between the two of us. Fair? If you want to use me as an accountability, and I will hold you to whatever it is. Of course, if you're not serious, you won't do that. But then, if you're not serious, you wouldn't have done it anyway. So don't waste your time.
Yeah, and it's important to stress just the procedure of actually sending you that email will make the person much more likely to achieve whatever it is they've written in that email, because it's like committing to it, put it in writing. Yeah.
First, and that's the same with goals. People say, "Oh, I know my goals." Well, show me the bit of paper. You don't know your goals. Write it down. It's the first step. Writing it down puts it from the realm of the mental into the physical world. So every idea that was ever done, the Apollo space rocket, I watched this thing on Netflix the Apollo space rocket started with an idea. Well, it started with the principle from Kennedy, didn't it? So, we will land a man on the moon. It started with a thought, which became words, which then became reality. It's how everything happens. Write it down.
And that, just coming on back to the subject of goals, that reminds me of something I was going to ask you about your presentation. You mentioned about limiting your goals. I presume you meant limiting the number of your goals rather than limiting.
Yes, sorry about the confusion there. Really, really good point to clarify. So yeah, no, goals need to be hairy, audacious, and magnificent in terms of your longer term goals. Do not hold back. Man's reach should be further than his grasp. I think that was Browning, may have got that wrong. But anyway, it's your reach when you talk about your goals. They're the things going to stretch you out to do the things you need to do. In terms of limiting the goals, limit the number, particularly when you're talking about long-term change, because otherwise you'll just trip over it. So I'm thinking about there much more specifically about, here's your long-term vision, describe it. And my vision, by the way, has no no facts or figures. It's just a feeling in a situation. That's my long term. I know what that feeling is going to be like, and I've described it and written it down. And if anybody's interested, I won't do it now, I'll share it with them. But I translate that through to daily actions, measurable actions. I actually do 3 a day because I'm kind of in the habit of doing it. But I know if I need something done on a repeating basis, I just write it in my journal, it'll be done. There's no wiggle room. Might be done if I get the time, it'll be done, regardless, hell or high water, COVID-19 or whatever.
Good, excellent. So one final question. Is there a place or a behaviour that is best to start with in terms of approaching your ideas?
Yeah, okay. Anything you're going to succeed at. I know that's not what people want to hear. Once again, that's very much in line with the, give me the solution. And there are a lot of people out there who will give you the solution. There are a lot of coaches and a lot of trainers, particularly, who will say, this is what you have to do. I don't have to do anything. What I need to learn to do is to develop the muscle, and it is a muscle. It's just like growing a muscle. When I was 14, I started rowing, and I did my first bench press, and I don't know how much they gave me. I think they gave me 100 pounds. I couldn't even move it. Within 6 months after bench pressing, I could easily do it, okay? So start with something you can do. You're not going to try and bench press a weight that you can't do. So start with something you can do and get in the habit of committing to do it and doing it. There's a guy who made you can see his thing on YouTube by doing, I think he's, how would you get it? Make your bed, okay? So he's a naval commander. He did one of those end of term type of things that the Americans particularly specialize in. And he said, the first thing you do every day is just make your bed. That's the one reinforcing habit. Once you've done that, you've achieved something in that day. And I know that sounds trivial, but actually what people do is they try stuff that's too hard. They don't do it and they fail. So do something you know is important. You know you can do, commit to doing it and get in the habit of doing it. You'll soon get bored because you're doing it every week, every day, whatever it happens to be. Then pick another habit and do it again, and then pick another, and then start stretching yourself. Once you've developed the muscle that when I write this down in my daily journal, I do it consistently without any excuse. It happens. Even if I have to stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning to do it, I do it. Then you've learned something. You're beginning to develop the muscle that will really lift you to do some really challenging stuff in future times.
I think that's a great place to finish. The idea that thoughts lead to actions, which lead to habits. And for me, that's certainly something which I found is very, very important in terms of my approach to business and also approach to life in general. Absolutely. So thank you very much, Rupert. That was very interesting and very informative. And I think because of the nature of a subject, I just want to stress to people that I would recommend, in fact, even if you watch the whole of the webinar, I recommend that you watch it again, because I'm sure you'll take in more than you did the first time around, and it will be available on our YouTube channel either later on today or tomorrow, and we'll send a link to you. And indeed also on YouTube, you'll find all the other webinars which we've been running over the past 2 or 3 months. So at this stage, normally I'll be telling you about the next webinar, but in actual fact, this today was the very last Backing Brentwood Business webinar. Well, I say the very last, it's certainly the last for the time being. The webinars were introduced in April as a means of helping local businesses in Brentwood to cope with the COVID-19 crisis and to give them various tips and advice on how to manage their business through this difficult time. And we've been running them for April, May and June, and obviously we're coming to the end of June now, so we decided to put them on hold, partly because of we feel we've covered a lot of subjects, but also because of the fact that more and more people are going back to sort of their normal working patterns, and they've got other things to occupy their time during the day. But who knows, we may decide to do something similar in the future for whatever reason. But anyway, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of you who've watched the webinars over the last 2 or 3 months, and hope you found them useful. If you have found them useful, if there's anything specific you put into practice, a bit like Rupert was saying, do send me an email to let me know, webinar@brentwoodchamber.co.uk. Also, for those of you who are interested in seeing more webinars, partly as a result of these webinars, the Chamber of Commerce have introduced a new series of webinars called Member Spotlight, where every couple of weeks we'll be interviewing one of our members and find a little bit more about their business and how they operate, with the idea of giving you, the viewer, some ideas into how you can run your business. So it's really modeling what other companies do well and seeing what tips you can take for running your business. Yesterday's one was with Matt Barry from Blue Serif, and the next one in a couple of weeks' time with Ian Brasher from iBray. all details on the Chamber of Commerce website. So all that remains really is for me to thank you all very much for watching today, and hope you've enjoyed it. And more importantly, I hope you followed the exercises and you found something useful from that. And do let Rupert know how you're getting on. And as I say, if you write to Rupert and tell him how you're getting on or what your plans or goals are, then you're much more likely to achieve them. So thanks very much, Rupert. It's been a pleasure having you with us today.
And thank you. Can I just say one more word? I'm a great believer in setting traps for people. In other words, committing them to things and then they have to do it. So I've just set a trap for you. One of the, I can't remember who did it. One of the comments in the chat thing was, are you committed to given there's a second spike, doing more of these things? I've just said yes on your behalf. Okay. So welcome to my world.
Right. Okay. Well done. Thank you.
A load more serious. I think I've watched quite a few of them, and one of my clients actually performed himself as well. So I'm really, really thankful to you for doing it. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Good. Okay, so all that remains really is for me to thank you very much for viewing, and to wish you all the best as you continue with your business, and enjoy the weekend. Thank you very much, and goodbye.